Politics Live. I'm Joe McGuire along with Michelle Batella. We've got all the latest headlines affecting Connecticut. And our guest coming up tonight at 5:30 is Connecticut news junkie, op-ed writer Terry Cowgill, who I always love talking to, Michelle, but especially today. You see, Terry was banned from Twitter.
I saw that.
Along with several other journalists. And the funny thing is Terry's not like a left-wing journalist by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
So we'll get into what happened to him. And we're also going to talk about his latest op-ed, which talked about the 10-year anniversary of Sandy Hook. So that is coming up at 5:30. In the meantime, we'll hit you off with some headlines.
Absolutely. So when lawmakers go back to the Capitol in January, their focus will be on the governor's new budget. Lamont's proposal. So reportedly, he's considering a middle-class income tax cut. Wow. It looks like he has support from both parties. Could the first income tax in 30 years come this year? The governor and I spoke today. Look, the bottom line is we're talking about middle-class tax cuts, and that's a great position to be in and to start a session, said Representative Matt Ritter, Speaker of the House. The Democratic Speaker of the House and the Republican Minority Leader are already exchanging ideas. We see the recession on the horizon, and how are we going to adjust to that? Not to mention, middle-class families are hit with inflation the hardest, said Vin Candeloro, Republican House Minority Leader. This week, Governor Ned Lamont told reporters he wants an income tax cut. His budget office is pricing it out for those earning $150,000 to $200,000 a year. It's nice to hear about this. We need this.
You know, Michelle, couple thoughts here. Number one, right? We've been talking about this idea of we've been seeing it in Washington. No reason it can't happen in Hartford. The idea of working together in a bipartisan fashion and doing things that are good for the people. Yes. Right? Especially the people in the middle class. We talk about so often about how those are a lot of time business owners.
Right.
And you've mentioned it all the time. They're the backbone of the economy, and to be able to help these people out. We also talked earlier this week, when we had Russ Morin on, we were talking about the idea that for the first time in a while, our income is outpacing our debts. And so Connecticut really is, we know about the surplus and we're paying down the pensions that were neglected for so long. And now that things have shifted in the direction of, hey, there is going to be a bunch of extra money. And I hate to say this, but Bob Stefanowski during the campaign talked a lot about doing these tax cuts for people. And the fact that we're financially in a position where it is doable, it's a feasible thing now. I love the fact that they're at least going to talk about it. You got both sides are very excited about getting it done, and they're going to work together with the governor to hopefully make this happen come January.
Absolutely. It's needed. Absolutely.
It's definitely needed. And I'm sure, especially with the Christmas holiday about to hit, people are going to spend a little more than they probably should or would normally. Boy, won't that make a nice difference going into next year to know that,
absolutely.
Meanwhile, homelessness is a major concern across the country, particularly here in the colder months. In Connecticut, leaders are now offering new solutions to address the need. Local advocates are calling that need an emergency crisis, and they're asking state leaders for more funding to address homelessness year-round, and especially during the colder months. Connecticut already allocates $5 million for emergency funding during the winter, but advocates want legislators to add the funding to the state's annual budget. The Downtown Evening Soup Kitchen in New Haven said in the Elm City alone, they've helped more than 700 homeless individuals in the past 2 years. They estimate there are still about 250 homeless people and 25 homeless families just in the Elm City. There's also a lack of shelter beds compared to before the pandemic. New Haven Mayor Justin Elicker says challenges around the homeless are more significant today than 3 years ago, and more must be done to support the most vulnerable in the community.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. I've noticed around Connecticut, it's getting bad. And I especially now with the cold winter approaching, well, it's here already, actually. I'm happy to hear about, the soup kitchen that we're supporting, in Wallingford, and all these benefits are helping people get just a meal for the holidays, shelter where they can't get it otherwise.
Yeah, it's tough. And again, we had talked about that earlier in the week. These are people that you know. These are your
Right.
friends,
Right.
neighbors, former classmates, former coworkers. People are having a tough time, and it doesn't take much for you to be able to help and make a difference in the lives of these people, especially around the holidays, and again, especially in the colder months.
And especially if you have elderly neighbors,
Mhm.
just go and check on them, say hi, bring them some cookies or what have you. I do it all the time, and they appreciate it so much.
Of course. That's such a great thing, Michelle. I gotta do more of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Always talking about, trying to get my kids more involved in just overall charity. And that's especially this time of year, great reason to
absolutely.
go out there and do
Yeah.
those things.
Well, a new scam is hitting Connecticut residents, telling them their packages from the United States Postal Service can't be delivered. The scam comes in the form of a text message and reads: "The carrier wasn't able to deliver your order because the shipping information is missing a house number." The text also has a link that opens to what seems to be the USPS tracking website. When residents go to enter their information, it will ask them for $3 and a security code. The scam is hitting residents as many as expected deliveries before the holidays. And according to the Better Business Bureau, the BBB's scam tracker has received numerous reports this week from Connecticut residents of the USPS imposter contacting people with the scam. And according to the Better Business Bureau, while the scammers may only ask for $3, once they have your credit card information, the
Hmm.
scammer will charge, that much more than that. The USPS released tips on how customers can protect themselves. Delete text messages that ask you to confirm or provide personal information. Legitimate companies don't ask for personal information, such as account numbers, tracking numbers, users' names, or passwords by email or text. Don't reply and don't click on the links provided in these messages. Clicking web links can install malware on your mobile device and take you to fake websites that look real but are used to steal your information. I mean, there's always scams going on, and I think more, it seems enhanced during the holidays. And it's just so frustrating to go through this and
I've got two of these text messages that's
really,
exactly
really,
this. Yeah, and I hadn't ordered anything, and my wife orders stuff all the time, and I knew,
yeah.
I was like, "Why are they oh, it's gotta be a scam," and then I got one, yesterday again, so twice this week, I have seen this thing firsthand, and I did not delete them. They're still on my phone, but I think I'll definitely yeah, I didn't know that you should delete them, but that's good advice, right? Get that off your
Yeah,
phone.
absolutely.
Don't click on
Yeah.
those links. I've got a buddy who does cybersecurity. I have him on the radio a lot. I think we're gonna get him on the show
No, that'd be
maybe
great. Yeah.
next week, and he could kind of talk us through. I always ask him stuff like, what am I looking for? Like, how do I
Right.
know if something is nonsense or not? And so we'll have Jason on and he can kind of explain to us the do's and don'ts. Because it's amazing, Michelle. I know this seems insane, but people are still clicking on dubious links,
Yeah. No, it's
especially
funny.
older people.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really sad, especially, if they get phone calls saying it's the IRS. IRS does not call you, first of all.
Right.
And they prey on the elderly. They get scared. But yeah, I get the email stating, "Thank you for buying the fluffy puppy pillow." And I'm like, and obviously you didn't buy that. And yes, exactly. Can you confirm the last four of your
Yeah,
your social?
sure
I'm
I
like,
would.
really? So yeah. And I love it, when you hear the phone calls too, that yes, we just need this information. Really? Okay, you don't have it. You called me anyway. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I had a couple of different friends who got the scam call that the police were on their way, kind of a thing.
Oh
And by
wow.
then, people already kind of knew the scam was out, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Send them,
Yeah.
totally send the
Exactly.
cops over here." And then they just hang
Exactly.
up on you, and you're like, "Okay." But yeah, you just sort of said it a minute ago, especially around the holidays. There's unfortunately
Yeah.
always people looking to scam people, and they are certainly looking to take advantage of the elderly. So again, talk to your moms and dads if they're a little bit older,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
never going to win a contest you didn't enter,
That's
right?
right.
You didn't win the
That's right.
Australia lottery because you don't
That's
play the
right.
Australian
Yeah.
lottery. So if it seems too good to be true, it is,
That's good
right?
advice. Good
Yeah.
advice.
Meanwhile, transgender athletes in Connecticut and their advocates secured a victory in court Friday when an appeals court ruled that the
Yeah.
Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference may move forward with a policy that allows transgender girls to compete on female sports teams. A three-judge panel of the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed that discrimination against transgender students violates Title IX, which prevents educational institutions that receive federal funding from discriminating based on sex. In a 2020 complaint, four cisgender high school athletes, Selena Soul, Chelsea Mitchell, Alana Smith, and Ashley Nicoletti, alleged athletic opportunities had been taken away from them by transgender girls and argued that a 2013 CIAC policy that permitted transgender athletes to compete on sports teams consistent with their gender identity were discriminatory because it had regularly resulted in the displacement of cisgender girls in competitive athletic events. The complaint filed by the Alliance Defending Freedom, a conservative legal organization, had sought to bar two transgender athletes, Terry Miller and Adria Yearwood, from competing in the 2020 spring outdoor track season, which was later canceled due to early pandemic shutdowns. The lawsuit also demanded an admission from 5 Connecticut school districts that enforcing the CIAC policy violated Title IX and asked that Miller and Yearwood's state track records be voided. Both women graduated high school in 2020, and neither competes at the collegiate level. A district judge last year dismissed that case, ruling that the plaintiff's request for an injunction was moot because Miller and Yearwood were no longer high school students, and no other transgender athletes were set to compete against cisgender athletes that following season. The plaintiffs, three of now whom compete for Division I NCAA track and field programs, filed to appeal the decision last year, arguing that the CIAC had deprived them of the chance to be champions. This is
Okay.
such a controversial issue, Michelle,
Sure
and
is.
right,
Yeah.
it's not one that we're going to solve right here today.
No.
But it is one that is ongoing. And, I think for a lot of people, they've sort of decided one way or the other. And I think this is one of those cases where, and we mentioned this when Russ was on earlier this week, that there's not any current transgender athletes competing in high school sports where this lawsuit at this point isn't moving forward because there aren't any transgender athletes in Connecticut currently participating and setting, records. I understand where people
They
feel
were, they were.
there were,
Yeah.
although their season again. So the young
Yeah.
ladies involved all went on to compete at
I understand.
Division I programs. So in order to show that you've been damaged, you would have to have not gotten a scholarship to a top program. And that's sort of where the situation, but definitely an issue that I think, again, this is going to be both sides, Michelle. I think at some point sitting down and trying to figure out what's the fairest and best way to have these athletes all compete where the playing field is level. Because at the end of the day, that's all we want for the kids. It's just a level playing field. And whatever they have to do to figure that out, I hope they do it. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if anybody does yet, but it's definitely going to take some scrutiny and some figuring out. And again, that bipartisan, let's both sit down. And again, not everyone's going to love it, but we're going to do something that's fair for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you great points. And I agree. The lawsuit is probably, mistimed, if you will. But as a woman, this this case is a little bit too touch to home to me. I was an athlete in high school and college, and I know, if I had to deal with that, I had to deal with someone who had better, if you will, genetics. If you had better, more testosterone, stronger, what have you, it would have been difficult. So I feel for these girls, and like you said, it goes either way, and so it's a tough one, and I really hope that it can get solved.
Yeah. Again, I really do. I think it's going to be one of those things where both sides of the aisle are going to have to get together and
Absolutely,
figure out,
absolutely.
something that
What's the
uh
fair
that
for
works for
each?
everybody,
Yes,
and whatever's the fairest thing. However
exactly.
that whatever that and again, we don't that it could potentially change everything about the way these sports are played, and that
Right,
might be all right too,
right, exactly, absolutely. That's a
So
good point. Yes,
we shall
absolutely.
see.
Well, Governor Ned Lamont has named another new commissioner in his administration. This time, new appointee will take over the steering wheel at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Oh, good luck to him. This comes as the current commissioner is retiring Deputy Commissioner Tony Guerrero, is being promoted and says standards have been raised and will continue to be a focus. Guerrera is the fourth deputy commissioner in the Lamont administration to be prompted to the top spot in the second term. Guerrera, spent 20 years in the State House, owned a construction company, and at 59 years old, has helped guide DMV during the COVID pandemic. Instead of waiting in line, many functions are now online, which is actually nice.
Mhm.
New ideas are already being debated, like a mobile unit. Seniors can get their IDs without having to drive to the DMV. That's nice. Why not form a mobile unit that can go out to the municipalities once a week at different locations at the senior centers? Added Deputy Commissioner Guerrera. One of the things that he would like to see is more communication. If you don't have the right form, DMV employees can tell you before you take the time to go to the branch. The emission testing process has also been modernized with the help of his leadership team. Guerrero, whose currently yearly salary is $150,000, must be approved by the legislature before taking the helm. Oh, I
I
wish him
think
the
I was
best.
telling you about a week ago, my daughter had was trying to get her driver's permit last year, and 4 trips back and
Yeah,
forth to the
yeah.
DMV because she didn't have the right this or that, and I
Form, yeah,
thought to
yeah.
myself, like, it's I mean, I live in Weathersfield, there's a DMV pretty close to us.
Mhm.
I hate driving over there for no
Yes,
reason, and my
exactly.
poor kid would come out of there crying her eyes out like, "Oh, I didn't
Oh,
get it again."
oh,
Again,
yeah, that's awful.
a
And
lot
then
of the stuff
trying to park there.
trying to
That's
park is also pretty rough, but
ugh,
again, trying to modernize these things and being able to do a lot of this stuff online, and I love the idea of mobile units going town to town so that
yes,
people don't have again, I'm in Weathersfield, but for people who aren't near a DMV, to drive 30 minutes to get to one and then to be disappointed and not get the results,
absolutely.
it would be so much nicer if these mobile units could just make their way to
Wouldn't that
your
be
town,
yeah.
right? Um, yeah, so I like that. We talked a lot about this during the election campaign. This idea of using technology to modernize things, to cut costs, to make things
Absolutely.
more efficient. I like the direction we're heading in. That is
Mhm.
very exciting.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, violent crime and property crime declined slightly
Hmm,
during 2021, while the number of arrests rose and admissions to state jails and prisons increased compared to the pandemic year of 2020. This is according to analysis of the latest trends in Connecticut's justice system. But compared to 10 years ago, the state is still far below the key metrics on crime rates and incarceration levels within the
hmm.
Department of Correction, while overall Connecticut's violent crime rate was less than half the national rate. During a morning meeting of the state's Criminal Justice Policy Advisory Commission, officials in the State Office of Policy and Management said that reported violent crime was down 43% since
Nice,
2012, and
nice.
reported property crime, mostly burglaries, fell by 29% during that same 10-year period. While admissions to state correctional facilities rose 41% last year compared to the height of the pandemic in 2020, it was still 44% lower than in 2013. Violent crime was down 9% in 2021 compared to 2020, and property crimes declined 2% compared to 2020. With 147 murders in the year 2020, Connecticut saw the number rise to 150 in
Mhm.
2021, but the state Now, the rate statewide was still 40% below the national average,
Yeah.
and there was a 5% increase in murders nationally during that period. Violent crime varies city to city and even among neighborhoods. Bridgeport, Stanford, and Waterbury experienced fewer murders in 2021 than in 2020. Both Hartford and New Haven reported 10-year highs. In 2021, there were 5,954 reported violent crimes in the state and 61,071 property crimes. Kevin Neary, the policy development coordinator for the OPM, noted that the pandemic seemed to have caused an increase in motor vehicle arrests of 12% compared to the prior year.
Yeah. Well, that's good news. I know they're comparing it to the national average, but it's better to hear that than not. It'd be nice if
Well,
it was a little bit lower.
Here's the other thing. Look, whatever the crime rates are, up or down, right? I think and we heard a lot of this again during the campaign season where people, maybe we're just more aware of it. There's a
Mm,
lot more social media, there's a lot more news coverage. It feels like it's out of control. And it's nice to see the numbers are down.
yeah.
I always say, look, any crimes are too many crimes. And when it affects you or somebody you know and love, it doesn't matter how low the rates are, right?
Exactly.
People are like, got to do something about it. I think the good news is that they're really taking a look at this. They understand people are kind of outraged by all the break-ins and a lot of the property crimes. We have to do
Yeah.
stuff about that. We talked to Bob Duff last week, and he talked about just that.
Yes.
That they're now in a position where these towns can talk to each other more, share these juvenile records to make sure we're not letting repeat offenders out. So again, steps in the right direction. I'd like to see crime continue to take big dips in the future. And that's the best way we're going to get there is by talking this stuff out and working it out.
Well, absolutely. And I'm glad to see the crime down, but I did hear about the catalytic converter crime. It's a big moneymaker. So just be aware when you go park in the parking lots, especially this holiday season.
And they're so brazen about where and
Oh,
how they'll
so
do it too.
brazen.
And it doesn't take a
Absolutely.
lot of time for them to get your catalytic converter. So if you
Yeah,
can park and keep your eye on your car, you're going to want to do that.
yeah. Well, for those traveling this holiday season, Westchester Airport was given dubious distinction of being the worst airport in the nation for the holiday travel. This is according to a new study released by Forbes Advisor. In an analysis of the nation's 100 business airports, Forbes Advisor found the venue as having the highest rate of air carrier delays, 8.54%, and diverted flights, 0.80%. Forbes Advisor also chided the White Plains-based airport for having the third highest percent of aircraft arriving late on average. This is across the 5 years. We considered 7.55% and the fourth highest percent of canceled flights, 2.63%.
Wow.
Furthermore, Westchester County Airport was faulted for having the fifth highest dollar increase in airfare price between the summer months and the holiday season, $30.49, and the third lowest percent on-time flights average, which 75.43%. Within the region, LaGuardia, Newark, and JFK airports rank 17th, 18th, and 19th on the worst airports list, while
Wow.
Bradley International Airport in Connecticut ranked 31st worst.
These are all the places I fly out of when I do
Yeah,
fly.
yeah.
This
But-
sounds right now.
But as Bradley International Airport in Connecticut is ranked 31st worst within the region, it also received an A rating for outstanding Series 2011 A and B airport revenue bonds issued on behalf of the Connecticut Airport Authority. The rating reflects BDL's status as a medium origination and destination hub. Oh my word, I can't even speak tonight. Destination hub in a competitive air trade market. The airport is a medium-sized regional hub that serves the state of Connecticut and has a history of moderate growth prior to the pandemic. Bradley also continues to hold a well-diversified air carrier mix. I absolutely agree with this study. I've had terrible experiences in Westchester, as much as I love it because it's such an easy airport, in,
Yeah.
out, one terminal, it's wonderful, but Yes, a lot of delays, price increases, a lot of cancellations, unfortunately, and I have had better luck at Bradley. But with, I guess we should consider where we're going when traveling this holiday season.
Yeah, true that. And I know Bradley just added some flights to Jamaica, which is nice.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely some good news this holiday season. Meanwhile, how about UConn? The UConn
Oh,
Huskies went
yeah.
from 1-11 a year ago to 6-6 this season. Its first bowl game in 7 years. Might not sound all that impressive, but consider just how bad things were under former coach Randy Edsall. From 2018 through 2021, the Huskies won 4 total games. In 2018, Edsall's second year at the helm, the defense was a historical
Mhm.
disaster, setting FBS records for points and yards allowed per game. That was 50.4 points and 617 yards. And that only begins to explain what a mess that program truly was. In 2020, UConn was the first team that canceled its season because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And somehow things even went further south from there, with Edsall ditching his players for Florida, according to current coach Jim Mora. UConn got off to a rough start this season, really bounced back after playing Michigan, NC State, and Syracuse. They won 4 of their next 5, and a 36-33 win over Liberty November 12th made the Huskies bowl eligible. All sorts of reasons for my Husky fan friends to be very excited. They'll be playing Marshall in the Myrtle Beach Bowl coming up on Monday in South Carolina.
Yeah, great. Just very quickly I know we have a guest coming, but tonight, as far as the weather is concerned, Friday, December 16th, cloudy with periods of rain with temperatures in the mid-30s. Tomorrow, partly cloudy with highs in the mid-40s and lows in the mid-20s. Sunday, sunny with highs in the 30s and lows in the 20s. And I know it's time, so stay tuned for our guest, Terry Cowgill. He's from Connecticut News Junkie after the break.
CT Politics TV and the Connecticut Taxpayers Union present Unaffordable America with Daniel Kent Newmeyer, Joe Patrina's band Little House, focusing on Connecticut.
Now get yourself ready, go cat go. Ooh, yeah.
Entertaining and taking an educational look at nonpartisan issues of affordable living in America.
Born in a land where we wave 'em high.
All points of view are welcome.
And we got blue angels climbing in the sky. I'm the luckiest guy in America. I'm the luckiest man born in America.
Join the Connecticut Taxpayers Union right now at ctpolitics.tv.
Born in America.
Welcome back to Connecticut Politics Live. Our guest, Terry Cowgill, is a contributing op-ed columnist at Connecticut News Junkie. He blogs at Politicon and is the retired managing editor of the Berkshire Edge in Great Barrington, Mass. Have this guy on my radio shows all the time. Terry Cowgill, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. It's been quite a day.
Oh, yes. So now I was part of my intro was going to be I think this guy's a great follow on Twitter. I highly suggest it, but that is not possible for people right now. I read earlier today before your post that they were banning journalists on Twitter. And I'm very anti Elon Musk, and I've said some terrible things. I think you actually liked something I said about him the other day. I'm not banned, but you are. Tell us what happened, Terry.
Yeah, well, at first the backstory, and that is that there were a number of journalists who were banned from Twitter by Elon Musk, and essentially, at least initially, the problem was one of these people was linking to one of those websites that tracks flights in this country, and there's several of them, as you probably know. And he at first he was saying, I think this is dangerous because, he has a private jet and you can always where his jet is at any time. And he said, but I won't ban them, anybody, because I believe in free speech. Well, turns out he believed in free speech until he didn't, because
Right.
then he turned around and banned them. And he said that basically, and this is just factually wrong, and he's been using this word all along. He has been saying that these people are doxing. He's being doxed. And of course, for the uninitiated, doxing is when you make public somebody's private information. And I've been trying to explain to people that, no, actually, when you get into a plane, it's basically a matter of public record, because the plane, the pilot and the other people, they have to file a flight plan. They have to, have all of the people's names who are on board are in the flight manifest, and the crew and everybody. And as a result, and of course, the planes are tracked all the time by the FAA, because what if something goes wrong? They have to know where you are, right? So no, this is actually publicly available information. And he's angry that people are posting publicly available information on Twitter because it concerns him. And he's concerned about this, but I don't think he is terribly concerned about anyone else, at least not as far as I've been able to tell.
Well,
so
in 8 days from now, I know NORDCOM is going to be tracking a certain old Saint Nick and his journey around the world, and I wonder if Elon's going to ban them.
Yeah, well, I mean, Santa has privacy rights too. You know that. Yeah. But anyway, so I went on, and I was on with I was on Twitter earlier today with somebody who was one of those parents' rights activists, involved in schools. There's a lot of them out there. And he or she, I don't really know the gender, was challenging me on something and said, well, why do you dislike Musk? Because, he banned these people for doxing him. And I tried to explain to her that, no, in fact, that's not, the case. And I actually, in my reply to her, included a link to one of the air traffic tracking sites, not specifically to Elon Musk's plane, just to one of the sites generally. And then I'd say about an hour later, I checked my Twitter feed, and there up came the notice saying that I had been permanently suspended, which is a very clumsy use of language, by the way, because you're either suspended or you're permanently banned, but you can't be permanently suspended. What the hell is that? Doesn't even make sense. So yeah, and here I am. I went on Mastodon, and I signed up there, and I'm trying to get a lot of connections there. It's a little bit of it's more difficult to navigate. It's much more decentralized than Twitter. But so far, I'm enjoying it, and it's been fun. I went on Facebook and told everybody that I'd been kicked off the other platform, and got a lot of support. I can't say that there was anybody among the 100 people who responded who said, "Good, you deserved it."
Right? Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Earlier this year, my main Facebook account got suspended for violating community standards, and I'm still not clear on what I did. Fortunately, I have, my backup Radio Guy account, and I've been using that now as my primary account. But some of these community standards, and again, as you just said with Elon Musk, where the consistency on the rule breaking doesn't seem to be any at all, or no rhyme or reason to it. We're not even able to stream this program, which is a nonpartisan, right down the middle newscast with a guest coming on to talk about Connecticut politics every night, is also not allowed to run on Facebook because it violates the community standards. And then I see stuff from Kanye West or from some of these really far right conservative groups, and they're free to run whatever they want, and apparently that doesn't violate community standards. So the
sides have turned, huh?
Oh yeah, terribly inconsistent, because Kanye West was banned for anti-Semitic tweets, and I can see. I think that's probably a good decision to ban him for that.
Mhm.
But then you turn around and you look at the Republic of Iran. It's just one anti-Semitic screed after another, and they're still putting it out there. So I don't. You're right. It's not consistent. It defies logic, and I'm tired of it. And I think Twitter has an owner who's kind of a megalomaniac at this point, and he's just out there. And I think he's trying to turn it into basically what Parler. You remember Parler, right? That was the right-wing site on which some of the operational planning for January 6th, the riots, were planned. So maybe he's trying to turn it into a site like that and just sort of usurp Parler. I don't know, but the people are bailing in droves. I haven't seen any hard numbers, but I expect to see some hard numbers pretty soon.
Yeah, I myself am about ready to go. I'm expecting I'll get booted off of there any day now, and I will definitely happily go. My other thing is it almost seems like a joke or like that this guy's just trolling everybody, and I can't help but think part of what he's doing is because let's be honest, I think over the last couple of years, I think Twitter's fallen off quite a bit. And I think he's trying to drive engagement. And so while he's suddenly this hero to people on the right, where before he wasn't, I really do. I think he's just trolling everybody. I think he's just trying to make Twitter relevant again. And some of the lengths he's going to do this are, again, inconsistent and inexplicable. But I think it's all for the sake of getting that engagement up on Twitter, and that's what I think he's just trying to do.
Well, that's how you make money in that business is engagement.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm sorry, Michelle, you were going to say something. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I'm disappointed that this is happening. I was hoping for more engagement by everybody now. That's what I thought, because even before Elon Musk, this is what happening to people on the right. So this is interesting that this is happening. But you're right. This is how people make money. You're right.
In engagement and fear and anger spike the engagement. So if there's content that makes you angry and afraid, you're going to keep coming back.
Absolutely.
And therefore, advertisers love that.
Absolutely.
So
right.
yeah, that's the whole thing.
Terry, wanted to ask you about your latest op-ed. 10 years after Sandy Hook, too much work remains. Obviously this past week we had the anniversary, and it's always an uncomfortable day, obviously in the state of Connecticut and around the country, as we all kind of reflect on that day. There is a lot of work that still remains to be done as far as, at the end of the day, right? It's hard to say what the right solution is. I don't think anybody's looking to ban guns. I don't know, right? You even allude to it, when they banned the assault weapons for 10 years, crime did go down. We don't know if there's a direct correlation. It certainly seems like it could have been a factor, but we got to keep the kids safe at school, right? I mean, that's plain and simple. And there are still so many of these school shootings. Like, what is the right answer? How do we get both sides to do something common sense? I think you and I talked too about, in June, they passed that bipartisan gun legislation in DC, and it really didn't do anything. It wouldn't have solved any of these crimes, right? I feel like that was more election year pandering, especially by the Republicans that signed on to it, who are generally very opposed to gun control. But what is the right step forward here? Like, how do we ensure these kids can survive their school day? Because that's really what it's all about.
Well, I think it can be. There's a lot of different approaches, and none of them are contradictory at all. A lot of people say it's got to be one or the other. It's got to be gun control. It's got to be mental health or school safety. Why can't it be all the above? I don't understand. These weapons of war. And I'm talking specifically about the semi-automatic pistols and rifles, these AR-15 style rifles with hollow point bullets that explode on impact. I just don't understand why we even have them around. After during the days of Al Capone, we banned the fully automatic weapons, those Tommy guns, that they used to use to blow each other up all the time.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
banned. And so there is a line. I don't hear the NRA complaining about a ban on Tommy guns. So there is a line that can be drawn, I would think. And, you can't buy a bazooka. You can't buy a tank. I mean, there are certain things that you can't just, you just can't go out and buy. And the Second Amendment does not allow you necessarily to own weapons like that. And the key word there, of course, in the Constitution and the Second Amendment is infringe. The citizen's right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it's just a question of what constitutes an infringement. And saying to people, no, we're not going to allow the sale, the importation of these semi-automatic weapons and the hollow point bullets, the armor-piercing bullets. We're not going to allow it. And I don't think that infringes on the citizen's right to keep and bear arms personally. My son is a Marine Corps officer. He owns lots of guns. So I'm not somebody who's a stranger to guns or is a gun phobe. But I do think that certain measures, gun control, are part of it. And also, of course, early intervention, being able to sense a crisis and stop it before it happens. And a lot of people say, school safety, you got to harden the target, obviously. And the other thing that a lot of people are saying is school resource officers. Although, I mean, I wouldn't have any problem with a school resource officer if a district wanted to have one. But, Columbine had a school resource officer. And, it didn't seem to help a whole lot. Uvalde, Texas had the school district there had its own police department. And they couldn't stop it. So I don't know how good it will do. It might, maybe there are some kids in the school who are anti-police and rebellious, and then maybe they get to know the school resource officer and they have a better opinion of police because they, have a friendship or something. I think there's a lot of good things that can come from that. But I don't think it's not a magic wand to say we'll put one cop in there with a pistol and think that he's going to be able to stop somebody like Adam Lanza, who comes in with 3 guns and 400 rounds.
Right.
No,
way.
Terry, you make great points, especially great points about the gun control. The only thing, my personal opinion is that, okay, so they start taking away those guns, but then where does it stop? Do they continue to take away? And that's my only concern. As a woman, I got my gun permit, and you walk around with the gun, and I feel safer. I feel better about things. And again, it's different. Definitely, a hand pistol is definitely different from an AR-15, if you will. But where does it stop? That's my concern. And then, with the school officer, I worked in the public school system, and there was a police officer. It was great community, great communication with the kids. Everybody knew him. Hey, hey, officer, this so and so. It was great. Gun right there. People saw it. The kids saw it. When you mentioned about Uvalde, for instance, that video was so disturbing. Those policemen stood down. I would love to give retired military guys, give them a good job. They're tough. They're hardcore. They have no problem doing what's right. I mean, these are all, like you said, these are all great points. What you had mentioned, but there's just, you're right. Shouldn't be one issue. This is the most vulnerable population of our country. We need to take care of them.
Yes. Well, we need to protect them. And that's the duty every parent has, to protect their child. And it's the duty everybody who works in a school has also.
Absolutely.
And you would think that between the two of us and also the police, that we would be able to protect them better. Because right now, it's what we're doing isn't working.
Absolutely.
Well, I like the fact that you brought up the Tommy gun, and where does it stop? Well, it could stop right there, right? Back in October, when obviously officers Hamzy and DeMonte were killed in Bristol. Once again, the weapon of choice was the AR-15. And my brother owns an AR-15. He lives in Connecticut, was grandfathered in. He has 2 of them. And he doesn't use it often. He likes to take it out to the range once a year just to make sure it works. He only has 2 in case, God forbid, one of them stops working. He's got the parts where he could interchange them. I asked him what he uses that weapon for, and he told me nothing. He wouldn't use it for hunting, and he wouldn't use it for home defense. He said, if you need an AR-15 for home defense, you're the wrong guy to be defending your home. That's not the kind of weapon that you should be using for home defense. He just likes it because it's fun and easy to shoot. And again, just uses it a couple times a year. But, again, the slippery slope argument of like, well, where's the banning going to end? Well, it can end exactly there. This rifle ends up in the worst places. All of the mass shootings, it's always an AR-15. I would think that most legally abiding gun owners, if you ask them straight, like, is this a weapon that you really need? I think most people will tell you they don't. And so, again, I'm not for banning guns, but this particular weapon shows up everywhere where there's a mass shooting, to the point where, like the Tommy gun and Al Capone's time, I think sometimes it's like that particular model is a huge problem.
Oh yeah, and I think the AR-15 is probably the Tommy gun of our time.
Mm-hmm.
I could see at some point. Well, I don't know if we'll ever get there. If we have several school shootings a year, one or two of which kill 20 or 30 kids, would that do it? I mean, I did not think that things would stay the same after Sandy Hook. I thought, this has got to be it. I mean, 20-something first graders and 5 adults, and it just it breaks your heart. All the people, the first responders who went into that school, most of them a lot of them needed counseling and psychological help. They were so devastated in the PTSD.
Yeah.
But nothing really happened. Ironically, here in the state of Connecticut, we did act, and I think that's largely because we were impacted by it, and you had Republicans and Democrats coming together. You had Brendan Sharkey and you had John McKinney and Len Fasano, and they all got together and found a way to make first of all, it was an AR-15 style weapon ban, essentially. And they found a way to get it done. And they really felt that they needed to do something at that time. But Congress, whoa, it's like herding cats trying to get them to do anything about guns.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Well, you have to admit, all these school shooters did have some sort of, weird home life or non-existent home life, some mental issues, and that's not talked about either.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned before, all these issues have to be addressed, but that one is just not being addressed for some reason. And I know that was in the new bill that Senator Chris Murphy had passed, but are they really going to do something? This is my thing. They're always talking about gun control and talking about the people, I just take it personally because as a law-abiding citizen, I'm being, if you will, targeted, as opposed to these people that really need the help.
Yeah, and that is one of the problems that we run into in our schools. Is we talk about early intervention, and there are all kinds of warning signs. Because most people, when you see somebody coming in shooting up a school, if indeed it is a student, most people will tell you when that happens, well, he was a kind of a weird guy, he had strange behaviors, and he's, he was a loner, nobody really liked him, he got picked on, there are patterns there, but how do you take that information and then say, okay, we're going to detain you or put you into an institution? I mean, this is America. We don't do that. We're a free country. So we're kind of at odds with ourselves there. We want to do something before it happens, but this is a free country, and you can't just lock people up because you think they might do something wrong.
Yeah.
So,
and yesterday, actually, we talked about the red flag laws, and we had talked about too, people are hesitant to say something sometimes. And so do they work, the way they're supposed to work? And you make a great point. You're right. You can't lock someone up for just being weird, if you will. Yeah.
right? There are constitutional issues, of course, and
That's right, of course.
all manner of things. Yeah, yeah.
By the way,
But that-
Terry, I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought up McKinney and Fasano because you
Oh.
recently also wrote another op-ed, and this one centered around Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this on the show a lot this week. You and I talked about this on the radio recently, but Donald Trump and his effect turned Connecticut into a bluer state than it had been in a long time. And this has always been a blue state. Even the most moderate Republicans at the in congressional races, Jamie Stevenson being one in particular, someone who I really liked and I really thought had a chance, lost by 17 points to Jim Himes. And I can't help but think that the stench of Donald Trump is making it really hard for Connecticut Republicans who are always been sort of the Rockefeller Republicans, very moderate. It's making it even harder for them. We saw a seat in Southington and a seat in Greenwich go blue for the first time in decades. And I've been suggesting that the Republican Party needs a rebrand, especially here in the state of Connecticut, where it's like we're not extremists, the Leora Levy's of the world. Like, that was a terrible mistake by the Republicans to run her. You and I have talked about this too. The idea we want two competitive parties, and right now it's at an all-time. There's no chance of these guys winning any statewide or national election in the state of Connecticut. There's just no way.
No, not when I believe it was 3 months ago or so. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, was asked, what his prognosis was for the midterms and what he thought were the important ways for the Republicans to win, and he cited candidate quality as one of the attributes that you need in order to succeed. And that's true on the national level. It's certainly true on the state level. Leora Levy just didn't have it. She had no natural base. She really had no experience beyond being on the Republican National Committee because she was a fundraiser and had money herself.
Right.
But she really was not fluent in the issues. She didn't really know much. So, she got, Blumenthal, this is one of those cases where we do have the same problem that the Republicans do have the same problem at the state level that they have on the national level. And that is that coming out of the convention, the Republican convention, Themis Claridis, who, the former House Minority Leader, who would have made a much stronger candidate against Richard Blumenthal, she won the convention. And then, but she didn't get more than 50%. She didn't get a majority. So then they had to go to a primary. And then once the primary happened, Donald Trump endorsed Leora Levy and really energized, I think, all of the Trump people in the party. And they came out in the primary and put forward Leora Levy basically to be on a kamikaze mission because everybody knew she wasn't going to win. And so, they do have that problem. Somebody like John McKinney, I mean, he ran, I think it was 8 years ago for governor. I think he would be an excellent governor, if you want my opinion, but he would be regarded as a rhino by those very people whose vote he needs in order to get the nomination. In the general election, McKinney could run as a Charlie Baker kind of, competent, moderate, conservative, technocratic leader. But you have to get the nomination first. And now Massachusetts, in fact, reverted to form because Charlie Baker didn't run for re-election. And so they ran this state senator named Jeff Deal, who was a full-on Trumper. And I mean, he got wiped out. And so, this is a problem even on the state level. And they got to find a way to solve it. Frankly, if it were me, I'd just get rid of the primaries. Let the parties nominate their own candidates at the convention, as they want. And why would you have both? Have a convention or have a primary. Both is just a waste of time. I know that all of the political people love the conventions because they get a week at Foxwoods or wherever the hell they go.
Right.
It's fun. But I don't think effectively it's just a waste of time and money.
It's funny. 2 weeks before the election, I talked to Peter Lamage, right? And he's kind of a Trumpy guy himself. And
He's a very Trumpy guy.
I said to Pete, Pete, if you had been the nominee, what would you? And the first thing he said was, I would have denounced Trump immediately. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was shocked to hear Pete Lamage say that. But even he recognized what an anchor around the neck this guy is to this party right now. And that going forward, right, if these guys are going to get competitive again, that brand of politics, it might have been hot a little bit in 2016, but my goodness, 2018, 2020, 2022, it's been an absolute failure. And I really do think it's time. I'd love to see the Republican Party get back to what they used to be, and I know a lot of people are like, well, the liberals have gone further left. They're great, but it's working for them, and they're not having any troubles in a lot of places. And so, again, I would say get back to your family values, the conservative, the patriotic stuff, because right now what's happening to me, it's an embarrassment. And I think it's just going to make it harder and harder for these guys, especially in Connecticut, to run any sort of competitive races.
Yeah, it will. And especially, I mean, Trump has been a hard sell to people in Connecticut for a long time, at least the last 6 or 7 years. But now it's just craziness. What he's selling $99 action figure cards, photoshopped. Oh my God, the grift just never stops. I mean, now it really looks like he's come off the rails. Like I don't even think he expects to win. He's just trying to make some money. He has no campaign apparatus, nothing. It's not even a serious effort. And yes, distancing themselves would be a great thing for any candidate, any Republican candidate in Connecticut, or in most parts of the country now. I think Trump is losing his grip slowly but surely on the Republican Party. And I don't think Ron DeSantis is the savior either that people have been making him out to be. He's quite a brittle guy. He did win by almost 20 points re-election, but he can be very awkward at times. Did you see that debate with Charlie Crist, where Charlie Crist said, well, can you make a promise right here and now that you're going to serve the full 4 years of your term if you're reelected? And DeSantis just froze. It was bizarre. I thought, what you would have thought he would have rehearsed the answer to that before going. It's an obvious question, right?
I also find it amusing that this guy rails against the liberal elites, and he's a graduate of both Harvard and Yale. And it's like, all right, buddy. Good. It's a tough sell right there.
Yeah, it really is. And then he taught at a fancy prep school in Georgia after getting out of Yale. It's like, a lot of these people, they don't want to be branded as elites because they know the Trump people hate the elites. They love to use the word elite. Frankly, I'm not quite sure what it means in this day and age, but it's out there. But no, I think there are several good candidates, and I think more and more Trump is going so far off the rails that I think you'll find a lot more Republican candidates stepping forward, and not just DeSantis, but there's plenty others who are just dying to get inside the White House. Ted Cruz and Rubio and the guys who ran last time, Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, former governor of South Carolina. I could see a lot of them coming forward now. I think they're feeling increasingly emboldened because Trump is falling even farther off the rails, if that's possible.
Yeah.
I just want candidates who are pro-America and America first. Those candidates are the people that, whether they can win or not, that's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, America first, I think if you're delivering that message with the right tone and saying it in the right way, it would be better received. When you're saying it and it comes across as being nationalist, that's a hard sell. You know, the idea of America first shouldn't be a controversial issue. Again, I think it's just in
Absolutely,
the
it
way
shouldn't.
it's
That's right.
being
That's
delivered
right.
to people where it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
sounds terrible. We got to do better. Terry, big day for you. Sorry that you're off of Twitter, at least for permanently, temporarily, or whatever the case may be. Always appreciate your time, my friend.
Yes, my pleasure. And nice to meet you, Michelle. And
You as well.
good luck with the show. It's terrific.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much. And
coming
Terry,
on.
I'm gonna probably need you next week on the radio. So
I'll
an
find
eye
a
on
way
your-
to get that done.
keep an eye on your text messages. Have a great night. And thank you so much
Okay,
for joining
bye-bye.
us.
Keep him in line, Terry.
Yeah. Terry Calgill, everybody. Love that guy. He's,
He's a
one
great
of
guy.
my favorite journalists. Again, contributing op-ed columnist for Connecticut News Junkie, also blogs at Politicon. Make sure you check out his fantastic writings. Before we go, we want to remind everybody the Foster
Yes.
Foundation and Klaus Larson Roofing are teaming up to help the Covenant Soup Kitchen with an emergency funding concert. It's happening this coming Sunday. David Foster and the Shabu All-Stars are going to be performing a live show at the Klaus Larson Presentation Theater on North Ridge Drive in North Windham. The Covenant Soup Kitchen donations and funds are significantly lower than they are last year. More individuals and families are asking for help. The numbers grow larger while supply chain issues and inflation have cut into food stocks. Outreach is underway to foundations, corporations who always do their part, but most of the Covenant Soup Kitchen budget is funded by small individual donations.
Yeah.
Tickets for this concert are just $20. They're available at eventbrite.com. You could search Shabu All-Stars. Again, the Foster Foundation and Klaus Larson Roofing are teaming up to help the Covenant Soup Kitchen with this emergency funding concert, 3 o'clock this Sunday, the 18th. Love to see you out there and get all your support.
Yeah.
This is a
Well,
fun
Joe,
show tonight, Michelle.
It's always fun. It's always
Right?
great to be with you. Yes.
Well, that's going to do it for us. We will be back on Monday evening at 5 o'clock for more Connecticut Politics Live. You can get all the latest headlines concerning Connecticut by visiting ctpolitics.tv/headline-news. And make sure you give us a follow at CT Politics TV on social media.
Have a
For
great weekend,
Michelle,
everybody.
yeah, absolutely. For Michelle Botello, I'm Joe McGuire. Have a great night and a great week.